Tip today, in association with Slattery's of Pecan, your main Peugeot dealer for over 50 years in the Premier County. Slattery'sGarage.ie.
Good morning, welcome along to Tip today. 1800 938 007. That's our free phone number. It won't cost you if you'd like to make a call to us. And Leanne is producing. Coming up on the show this morning, we'll be hearing from a member of the Jewish community in Munster. We'll also be talking about a triple lock, because the Tipperary Neutrality Network, they're calling on the council to help save Ireland's neutrality. Could the commercial rate increase be a positive thing? We'll be hearing from businessman Peter Ward in Nina. The story of Ireland, John G. O'Dwyer will examine Ireland's pre-Christian era. So all of that and much, much more on the way. Some great competitions for you as well, because Johnny B on the programme yesterday, and the two Johnnies, they've given us a pair of tickets for Pints in a Field, the great Two Johnnies festival that's happening next summer. So we'll tell you how you can win those later on. And our good friends at Mr. Mister, located on Friar Street in Cashel and Abbey Street in Kerr, they've given us a €50 voucher for every day this week. So we'll tell you how you can win that in a while too. 1800 938 007, the free phone number. You can text and WhatsApp 083 311 3311. You can email tiptoday@tipfm.com. Let's have a look at the front pages of some of your newspapers. And it being Wednesday, the local papers are on your shelves. The Nina Guardian, the main story there, Tipperary County Council is to convene again after failing to reach agreement on its budget for 2026. That is the lead story on The Guardian today. The Tipperary Star, the headline there, heartbreak over death of young woman, and that's making reference to the passing of Harriet Penfold. The Nationalist, and the headline on The Nationalist, student drove like a lunatic is their headline. An electrician enters a guilty plea and is to be sentenced this week. 24-year-old from Clonmel caused carnage in Limerick City. To the national newspapers then, the Irish Times, and right across the papers, coverage of President Zelensky's visit to Ireland yesterday. It's the lead story on the Times. They're telling us that Ireland will use the EU presidency next year to accelerate the enlargement agenda of the bloc. Taoiseach Micheál Martin signalled as he welcomed President Zelensky to Dublin yesterday. Also reading on the Times today, judicial reviews that block vital infrastructure and housing are to be restricted. At the same time, ministers and top civil servants will be given direct responsibility for delivering specific reforms to accelerate projects under a plan to be launched by the government this morning. And also I'm reading on the Times today, interesting one indeed from Conor Lally, that the government is moving to tighten laws for elected representatives after it emerged the legal obligation for newly elected TDs to produce a tax clearance certificate is not strong enough to prevent veteran criminal Jerry Hutch from running in the upcoming by-election in Dublin. Let's have a look at the Daily Mail. And the main story on the front page today, Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky yesterday told the Irish people that there was a chance to end the war with Russia, just as Vladimir Putin warned Europe his nation was ready to expand the war if provoked. And again, that's the lead story on the Examiner. Their headline there, Zelensky pleads with Ireland, never lose faith in Ukraine. Also on the front of the Examiner, Ireland's forthcoming presidency of the EU is likely to heighten the chance of the country being targeted by hostile states, a cybersecurity conference has heard. And finally, a look at the Irish Independent. And again, it's dominated by a picture of the Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky inspecting the Guard of Honour at government buildings yesterday. But he looks absolutely exhausted. The lead story on the Indo today, however, the government scrapped budget energy credits despite advice from its own officials as electricity and gas prices rose. Now, documents obtained by the Sinn Féin MEP Lynn Boylan also warned of a spike in those energy bill arrears to a record 300,000 with average annual bill increases of €300. So that's a look at what's making headlines today. Do you want to make comment on any of that? And if you do, once again, 083 311 3311. Now, Tipperary Sinn Féin councillor David Dunn says the HSE plans to inflict a further blow on the health services delivered in Carrick-on-Shore by taking the consultant-led cardiology services away from the primary care centre there. And he joins me now. Good morning to you, Davy.
Morning, Frank. Good morning to your listeners.
And good to talk to you again. When and how did you hear about this decision, Davy?
So we've been monitoring the whole situation in around the primary care and delivery of services that were promised, because you know that we fought very, very hard for St. Bridget's, and that fight continues. So we use every means possible to get information, and I contacted our TD in Clare, Donna McGettigan, to put in a PQ to the HSE, to the Minister for Health, and then the HSE were ordered to reply directly to her. So when we got that information back, we were asking about the diabetic services that were taken out, but then they dealt another body blow by telling us now that the cardiology consultant led is also being removed from Carrick-on-Shore Primary Care Centre, and the excuse they're given is there's no room availability. They said that the demand for mental health services is so high that there's only 2 rooms available.
And tell me about that. I mean, are you incredulous about that? I mean, as far as you're concerned, are there rooms available for this?
Well, it was always known as the white elephant because there was nothing in it. You know, well, that was that's just a trope, you know what I mean? But there was things in it, but there was plenty of empty space in it. And it was only recently in the last number of years that doctors have gone down there, because the whole idea of a primary care centre was a one-stop shop. And it was following on from Sláinte Care, where you bring the health services to the community instead of the community to the health service. So it was a big win for us to get a primary care centre in Carrick-on-Shore. I know it was mainly led by former Labour Senator Dennis Landy, had a big part to play in it, delivering that. And we were all delighted and excited to have it there. But then it kind of laid half empty for a long number of years, and now there is 2 doctor services operating out of it. But I've been down there and I've seen plenty of empty rooms, and I want the HSE to clarify now and to show our Oireachtas members from South Tipperary what the availability of rooms are down there. And I'm sure our Oireachtas members will be looking for that clarification as well. Where
are the cardiology services going then, Davy?
They're going to Clonmel, and the diabetic centre is going to Clonmel as well. So this is like the centralisation of all the services. And they said it's going to be served by a direct bus route. That's correct. But the logistics of that for somebody that's elderly and all that, trying to get from the bus up to the Clonmel Hospital, it's a steep walk up that hill, you know, and there's other things there. If you don't get the bus, you could have a whole day gone on you instead of walking down to your local services. This is, as I said, it's against Sláinte Care policy. The policy was laid out there to bring health to the community and not the other way around. And this is unacceptable.
Have you concerns that it's not confined to cardiology? Is there a possibility about the respiratory services, for example?
I am concerned. I'm very concerned, and that's why we issued that statement yesterday. Look, and as I said, we have no TD currently in South Tipperary, so we'll be calling on our Oireachtas members of all parties and none to help us and push to retain these services, and ones that we lost to get back. I mean, room availability when St. Bridget's is full of offices is a bit crazy, if you ask me.
Well, people might be forgiven for thinking, Davy, that, you know, how effective is local representation really here? I mean, when you look at what happened with St. Bridget's and what's about to happen with the primary care centre as well, I mean, how effective can you be if all of this is happening to the detriment of Carrick-on-Shore?
Well, you can only be a voice of the people. You know, as a public representative, you are the voice for the people, so you can only highlight it. A TD then would be the next step up. He can voice it at Dáil level, and then a government TD should have access to the ministers. So we do have government TDs elected in South Tipperary, and you know they need to stand up because the people voted for them, and whether they voted for him or they voted for somebody else. When he's elected to represent everybody. So that doesn't matter if they vote for Sinn Féin, if they vote for Seamus Healy, if they vote for whoever. an independent, it doesn't matter. They're there to represent the people. So we be calling on those to step up and do their job, what they're elected to, and fight for services to be retained in Carrick-on-Shore.
When do you lose the cardiology services? I mean, are they continuing on for the moment, or what's the story there?
They're continuing on for the moment. I'll forward the email to your researchers there, and they I just haven't got it right in front of me here now.
Okay, right, but they are continuing on. Do you know, is it till the end of the year, or is it into next year?
From just reading it yesterday and reading it again this morning, I tried to get it all into my head. It's next year definitely. So I think it's continuing on for the rest of this year, and then it's moving next year.
Right, but it's definitely moving, is it?
Yeah, they did no room availability. There's what keeps being repeated in the email.
Yeah, but you don't accept that, obviously. Because your own experience is that there is room there, or there are rooms there.
I've attended clinics down there with my son and for physiotherapy, and there was a lot of empty rooms as far as I could see, but look, I'm not going to come on the radio and say there's empty rooms down there when I don't know categorically are they. That'd be misleading the public. So if the HSE say there's only two rooms available, we have to take them as their word, and then we have to go down and actually ask the HSE to show us where the rooms are and what is the problem. Why is there no rooms in a massive relatively new build? And then why? The question would be then why, if they're not going to bring back the services, St. Bridges that we lost, the vital services that we lost in St. Bridges, why can't St. Bridges be used? If it's consultant-led, there's no clinical stuff in there. So I'd imagine not being a clinic is that it's a room with a table and a consultant sitting down to advise you what's the best course of action to take with your health.
Along with your colleague, Councillor Anne-Marie Ryan, you're calling on the government as well, Davy, to implement a national action plan to address the growing waiting list for diagnostic scans. Some of those figures are kind of scary, aren't they?
Yeah, they're off the charts. Again, look, as you said, what can a local representative do? Well, they're exactly what a local representative, myself and Councillor Anne-Marie Ryan are putting out statements, putting the pressure on the government and trying to hold them to account. So that's the best we can do, to highlight issues that has been brought to us by constituencies or issues that we see ourselves, and those numbers just jump off the page there. And then health has been a major problem in Ireland for years and years and years, and they don't seem to be getting on top of it, no matter who goes in there as health minister. So, it's consecutive governments have failed the public.
And do you reckon that Carrick-on-Shore in particular, and the people of Carrick-on-Shore, have been failed, particularly where health is concerned?
I think they have. And look, you know how passionate I was about St. Bridges and retaining the services down there. I mean, there were people born down that hospital. There were people, there was people stitched up, and all other medical stuff was. It was a proper small hospital, and now that's gone. So they replaced it with a primary care centre, and they promised us the sun, moon, and stars. We were promised this diabetes clinic would be state of the art, and that's what was going into St. Bridges, and it's not after going into St. Bridges. And now they took it away. Whatever service they put into the primary care centres, that's been taken away. So, fool me once, shame on me. Fool me twice, shame on you. You know what I mean?
And
so that's the way it looks like to me.
Do you think at the time, was it cynical in that it was sort of sugaring the pill of losing St. Bridget's?
Yeah, that's what we stated. That's the words we used in our press statement, the sugar and the pill. Yeah, and I think that's exactly what it was. To dilute the anger that was there and the anger that was building over the loss of services at St. Bridget's, they promised us this, And I know, look, in fairness to Fianna Fáil Councillor Kieran Burke, he came out very strongly at one of our municipal district meetings against his own party person, Mary Butler, at the time. So that's the kind of action we need, and I would hope I would be in the same position if it was my party were doing this, that I would call it out. You have to call out what's wrong.
Well, call it out for me now. Are you giving up on St. Bridget's? I mean...
No, we're not giving up on St. Bridget's. We're going to keep fighting for St. Bridget's because they're vital services. It's never too late to do the right thing for the government to do the right thing.
Well,
these services...
it is the right thing to make sure you have those services back in St. Bridget's, Davy, but you fought a good fight and to no avail, really.
Yeah, look, I don't like giving up. I'm not that type of person that just gives up that easy. You know what I mean? Look, we did fight a good campaign. We had great support, and we tried everything. We got a lot of stick at times, and we did things wrong at times. Yeah, we hold our hands up to that. But like, why give up? Why can't we fight to get services back? If we lose services, you fight to retain, or if you're losing service, you fight to retain the service. And then if the services are gone, you fight to get them back. And then you fight to keep them. So it's almost an ongoing battle when it comes to health and health services. And I think, look, I'd be doing a disservice to the constituents if I didn't keep fighting and didn't voice my opinions and their opinions. That I get it. Every time you go to a funeral or go to a gathering, people will always mention St. Bridget's and what it meant to them. And, my parents or my grandparents were spent a lot of time down there, and there was some loss to the community. And people all the time say to me.
You have your council meeting on Monday coming again, where you look at the budget. Any news for us on that since I last spoke to you, Davy?
The budget meeting is on Friday, and there's the full county council meeting is on Monday, which the triple lock will be dealt with on Monday. On the budget, I got a strong feeling that it will pass. There's ongoing negotiations between Fine Gael and the officials, the council officials, and Fianna Fáil are negotiation. And as are other people, we're in contact with our finance person as well, the council finance person. So there's ideas being floated about, but I think, as was reported on your station yesterday, one of the business owners asked for savings. And that's what we tried to do last year, and we were laughed out of it. I think councillors have to take some pain here. There's big allowances there for SPCs. There's big allowances for chairs. I'm a coherent myself. I have no problem taking a hit. So I think councillors have to lead from the front here. You know,
and that's commendable, Davy. But I mean, that would be just a drop in the ocean when you look at the entire budget.
It's a drop in the ocean, but it counts. It's shown some sort of leadership. To me, the opposite would be not to do anything. You know what I mean? To keep taking it and then pushing it all onto the ratepayers. Now, the budget now is trying to look after the small ratepayers and go after the bigger ones. I understand that, and that's to be welcomed. We have to protect the small businesses that are the lifeblood of our main streets and our streets of all our towns in Tipperary. It's a massive, massive budget, but we have to look at it. There's ways of saving money, and I continually ask the executives to show us where money can be saved, and I'm asking councillors to come up with ideas where they can, where we think we can save money, because we have to show leadership on this issue. And another thing I said, and I was probably a bit irate when I was on you at the last time, and I'm after calming it down a little bit, but I feel very insulted the way councillors not involved in the pact are treated. We're not consulted in any way. I wasn't even asked to support the budget. You know, how do they know that I'm not going to support the budget? Because they didn't even ask me. And they could have said, well, have you any ideas, which is what we put forward last year, and they were voted down. Now, that's democracy. I have no issue with that. But at least consult us. At least tell us what's going on. What ideas have they? And how are they going to mitigate? And don't be trying to go out and say, we're going to hit people with 5%, but we're going to be their savers at the same time. You can't be talking out of both sides of your mouth.
All right, Davy, look after yourself, and thanks for coming on with us. Thank you. Good morning to you. That's Sinn Féin councillor Davy Dunn speaking to us from Carrick-on-Shore this morning.
Tip FM's Tip Today.
With Slattery's Garage, Puckon. Main Peugeot dealers in the Premier County. And now stocking the full range of the luxury French car brand DS Automobiles. Book your test drive today with Slattery's Garage, Puckon. See slatterysgarage.ie.
Tip FM's Tip Today.
With Slattery's Garage, Puckon. It's time to change. Test drive the award-winning range of Peugeot hybrids and fully electric vehicles at Slattery's Garage today. See slatterysgarage.ie.
Recent figures from the Institute for Jewish Policy Research estimate that there's 2,700 Jewish people living in Ireland. But did you know there's a strong Jewish community in Munster and indeed in Tipperary? Sophia Spiegel is a secretary of the Cork Jewish community and joins me now. Sophia, good morning to you.
Good morning.
And really good to talk to you today. My understanding is you no longer have a synagogue in Cork, but you do meet on a regular basis.
Yes, yes. Unfortunately, in 2016, the local synagogue closed, mainly because that was an Orthodox synagogue, and the community that is still active here is a progressive Jewish community. But yes, we meet twice a month for services
and
festivals.
Do Jewish people from around Munster make their way to Cork for those services?
They do, but we're not the only progressive community in Munster. There's also a community in Limerick, and we were very fortunate to receive 4 Torah scrolls for our communities in Ireland in August from a community in America, in Boston. They donated those to us, and as a result, we have a community in Galway, in Limerick, and obviously in Cork, we were already here, and one in Belfast. And
the Torah, that's your sacred scrolls, isn't it?
Yes. Yes, it contains the first 5 books of the Christian Bible, and it's handwritten. It takes a year to write, and they're really, really precious and expensive.
It was a generous gift, wasn't
it? Incredible, yes, yes.
Yeah, and how does that work? And forgive my ignorance on this, but do you have access to those scrolls? Are they present during your celebrations? How does that work?
Yes, so they are present during our services, and on every Saturday we read from the scrolls.
You were born in Amsterdam. You spent your childhood between Amsterdam and England.
Brighton, yes.
I'm just wondering, how different is it to be Jewish in Cork than it was in Amsterdam and in England? Is it a very different experience, Sophia?
Yeah, because we're a much, much smaller community, and people have a lot less knowledge about Judaism. It's the standard experience here. When I tell somebody that I'm Jewish, they tell me they're the first Jew they've ever met. Though I must say, people are very genuinely interested, and are very warm towards Jews in general.
Yeah, but you notice there is a lot of curiosity about being Jewish.
Yes, because there's so few of us around.
Yeah. And tell me about, what some people might view as a rise in anti-Semitism, particularly in the last few years of what's going on between Israel and Gaza. Are you aware of that, and does that infringe on your daily life, Sophia?
Well, in general, people tend to be very friendly. If you compare the anti-Semitism in, say, England for people in their daily lives to Ireland, it is actually better in Ireland. I'm a progressive Jew, so you can't see from the outside that I'm Jewish, but even people who are a part of the ultra-Orthodox community who wear the, black outfits with the hats and all that, they have experienced very little harassment here. So on a day-to-day basis, it's really not an issue. But there's obviously a lot of anti-Israel rhetoric, and sometimes that can be complicated, especially the Israeli Jews that live here, because we do have an Israeli Jewish community here as well. They find it quite hard.
Maurice Cohen, who's chair of the Jewish Representative Council of Ireland, he said he is positive that the vast majority of Jewish people in Ireland do not support Benjamin Netanyahu or his government. Would you go along with what Mr. Cohen is saying? Yeah. You didn't even have to think about that. You said absolutely.
No. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And how do you get around that then? Because I presume it comes up in conversation. How do you get around that? Do you think that people are waiting for you to justify in some way what Netanyahu is doing?
That tends to be the main issue that we run into, is that when you tell somebody that you're Jewish, then the first question that you get next is, but what about Gaza? And honestly, it's not okay to expect just the average Jew that you meet to have to justify politics in a country where I don't have citizenship, and I don't agree with the local politics. But we're not, and I think that's the main problem also with the Israeli Jewish community here, is that they really feel they're being made responsible for the actions of a government that they're obviously in a country that they don't even live in. So it's complicated.
And it's very complicated indeed. But I suppose what's not complicated is, the huge numbers killed in Gaza,
okay.
but also...
We agreed we would have a conversation about Jewish history here, and I really don't feel comfortable going into politics, because what you're doing right now is exactly what I was talking about.
Well, explain that to me now. Why
I don't need to justify the political situation in Gaza to you on radio right now.
Right. Well, I didn't expect you to justify it in any way, but obviously, if I'm speaking to you, it would have to come up in the conversation in some way.
And not at all, because for the vast majority of Jews, the situation in Israel is not part of their daily lives of being a Jew.
Is it not?
No.
Right. Okay. That's very interesting, because, again, the perception would be quite different to that. Would be that you would be watching your screens and listening to your reports on this all of the time, that it would be vital to you to know what's going on.
For a lot of people, that's not the case.
Right. Okay. Very interesting. So tell me about the history of it's a unique history, really, the Jewish people in Ireland, isn't it? I mean, many people. Is it Lithuania? Most of the Jews came to Cork initially.
Well, so the surprisingly, the history of Jews in Munster is quite old. We had the first Jewish mayor in Youghal in 1555, so that's quite a long time ago. And there was a very active community in the 1700s of Spanish refugees that came to Cork. We don't know if they had a synagogue, but we do know that they had a cemetery, and we know where that is in Cork City. And then for about 100 years, we had very little information about the Cork Jewish community, and then indeed in the late 1800s, under the influence of the increasing anti-Semitism under the Russian Tsar in Lithuania, the Lithuanian community came to Cork and Dublin, and also there was a synagogue in Waterford and in Limerick.
How did the numbers, particularly in Cork, diminish so quickly?
So really what happened is the economic downturn that the Irish suffered from as well. There was very little work, and just like the Irish, the Jewish community went abroad to get work, because we have to eat as well.
Sure, yeah. An unfortunate part of our history, certainly, is what happened in Limerick in the early part of the 20th century. That was pretty awful for Jewish people, wasn't it? Yes,
and it really is the only significant anti-Semitic event in Ireland.
Right, but it was considerable, because it resulted in many Jewish people leaving Limerick, in fact, to go abroad, to leave the country altogether.
To leave the country, but also they went to Cork, and it's how we got the Mayor Gerald Goldberg. His family moved from Limerick to Cork, and they settled here.
Tell me about where December is concerned, because December is important to the Jewish faith, is it not? But not Christmas as maybe Catholics would know it.
No, so we have it's called the lunisolar calendar, which means that we have our month starts when the new moon appears. But because some years there in one solar year there's 12 moons, and other years there's 13 moons. About once every 3 years we have a leap moon, if you will. And the month that we call roughly December is called Kislev, and on the 25th of Kislev we have Hanukkah, which is our light festival.
And as a progressive, and this is your description of yourself, as a progressive Jewish person, do you still need your food to be kosher, for example, Sophia?
So most progressive Jews don't buy kosher food. It's also very complicated to get kosher food in Ireland, because there's such a small community. So really we can only get our kosher food in Dublin, and even in Dublin they have to import it from England. So a lot of progressive Jews do stick to sort of general food laws, but so kosher is a complicated term. Most people think it refers to the way that animals are slaughtered, right? But kosher is a much wider concept, and it has to do with all sorts of food preparation celebrations, and there's certain animals that we cannot eat. Obviously, pork is one of them, but we also don't eat food from the sea that doesn't have that it isn't fish. So no shrimp for us. And we also don't mix milk and meat products in one meal.
It's interesting. And where education is concerned, a lot of controversy over the last few years about Catholic schools and a Catholic ethos, for example, in schools. Are there Jewish schools, for example?
There are two Jewish schools, a primary and a secondary school, but they're both in Dublin. So for people who are Jewish and outside of Dublin, usually we send our children to Educate Together schools as a result.
All right. And where the social media is concerned, for example, I know that you're very instrumental in putting yourselves out there on social media. Is that something you're starting to embrace? Yes,
more and more. Also because a lot of people don't know that we're here. That's one of the reasons why I'm on the radio today. Not just Irish people who would like to know that there are Jews out here, but also Jewish people who immigrate here and then don't know that there's a Jewish community.
Now, you mentioned the Mayor of Cork, and you know, traditionally Jewish people have been involved in Irish politics. Is there a drive to have you more involved, do you think?
That's up to the individual. It's not something that we decide as a group of people.
Well, would you like to be more represented in Irish politics, I suppose is what I'm saying to you, Sophia?
So one of the issues that we've had over the last years is that we're not being heard. And even though Maurice Cohen of the Jewish Representative Council really works very hard and talks to a lot of politicians, there is not a lot of affirmation and recognition for the fact that we do experience anti-Semitism, right? We had Michael D. Higgins say that there is not an anti-Semitic bone in any Irish person, and that's just not true, right? So to tell people who are experiencing anti-Semitism that it's not real, that is an issue, and I think that we should. That should be taken more seriously in our community, and not just anti-Semitism, but I think racism in general is something that we need to raise awareness for.
Well, even though you've said to me that you yourself, you haven't experienced anti-Semitism, really.
Well, I haven't said that I haven't experienced any anti-Semitism. I've said that in general people are really good, which they are. But we do all experience anti-Semitism to some extent. Children who get thrown coins at them in school, swastikas carved in the chairs, Hitler jokes in the locker room. You know, they all happen to every one of us.
Even still, this is happening
absolutely.
in schools.
Yes, I have 4 children. They're teenagers, and they have all experienced this.
Would it surprise you to know that, you know, we spoke a little about what's happening in Gaza earlier on, but because you made the points to me that doesn't come into your daily lives, people are really surprised, and some of them are annoyed by that. Can you understand that, Sophia?
In what sense?
Well, when I asked you about what's happening in Gaza and the huge numbers of people dying there, and of course to take into account the dreadful atrocity that happened in Israel as well. But people are surprised when you said to me that this doesn't really come into your daily lives. As
Jews, yes. Because Jews is not about the conflict in Gaza, right?
Right. But as a yeah, I find that hard to understand, to be honest.
Okay.
Yeah, because some people say that, well, basically to sum up everything that's coming into us today is that they can't understand that you could be Jewish, even in Ireland, and not be fully across and affected by what you're hearing from Gaza and Israel.
Of course we're affected, but that doesn't mean that our daily lives revolve around that.
Right, okay.
we're affected by almost everybody in our community knows somebody who was involved with the atrocities on the 7th of October in 2023, because the Jewish community is relatively small. So many people have family members who were either murdered or abducted. And many people support the initiatives that are there in Israel to have Palestinians and Jewish population work together and find positive solutions for the issues, right? I think it's really important to emphasize that, just like the issues that we have had here in the north, is that it needs to be ground up support for the people who are there. They're the ones who have the solutions in their hands. And many of us support those and are involved with those, but that doesn't mean that that's the foundation of our Jewishness.
Right, but you're not a supporter particularly of Netanyahu?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not.
All right, most informative and good to talk to you, Sophia, and thank you and good morning to you, and we wish you well. Thank you. That's Sophia Spiegel speaking to us there. How do you feel about that? 1800 938 007. The text and WhatsApp is 083 311 3311.
Tipp FM's Tipp Today.
With Slattery's Garage, puck on. It's time to change. Test drive the award-winning range of Peugeot hybrids and fully electric vehicles at Slattery's Garage today. See slatterysgarage.ie.
If it matters to you, it matters to us. Call Tipp today on 1-800-938-007.
Now, next Monday, 2 motions will be debated at the Tipperary County Council meeting on the government's plans to abolish or amend the triple lock. Now, the triple lock, just to remind you quickly, in Ireland, indeed, it refers to 3 conditions that must be met before the country can send its defence forces on overseas peace support operations. These are UN mandate, approval from the Irish government, and a resolution passed by the Dáil. Now, recently, the Irish government approved reforms to change this mechanism. Well, the Tipperary Neutrality Network are calling on the council to help protect Ireland's neutrality. I'm glad to be joined now by Niamh Ní Bhréin, who is researcher with the Transitional Institute and co-organiser of the Neutrality Roadshow. Niamh, good morning to you.
Good morning, Fran.
And it's good to talk to you today. You are calling on the council. What exactly do you want them to do, Niamh?
So the idea is that there are different councils around Ireland. At the moment there's 8 councils around Ireland that have called on the government to protect the triple lock and Irish neutrality, and we're hoping that Tipperary will become the 9th council next Monday, so it's the 8th of December. And it is a message from the people. So it's people trying to engage with democratic structures at all levels. So as well as engaging TDs and senators, it's also people engaging their local councillors. So after our roadshow event in Thurles, which took place in October, a local group formed called the Tipperary Neutrality Network, and they've been engaging councillors. One of the councillors was actually at our meeting, with a very good meeting in Thurles. About 35 people turned out. And since then, there's been an active movement around the county. So there's been people in Cahir, Clonmel, Cashel, Thurles, Templemore and Nina. They've gathered over 1,000 signatures. They've been emailing councillors, and they're calling on the council to act as a counterweight to the government. And what we've seen happening in different councils, and Wexford is a particular example, we've seen councillors who are in Fianna Fáil and in Fine Gael who have actually voted against the party's line, which is to get rid of the triple lock. And they've voted in favour of protecting the triple lock and protecting Irish neutrality, saying that they could not, in good conscience, vote for something that would see Irish people being sent off to participate in wars. Some of the quotations from the Wexford council vote come from Jim Sullivan, who's a councillor, a Fianna Fáil man, and he was the chair. He voted actually in favour of the triple lock, and he said, I don't want any hand act or part in anyone losing their life in foreign service because of a vote I cast. So they took it very seriously in Wexford, and I hope in Tipperary as well that they will take it seriously. This is the councillors, this is TDs and senators having their cards marked. and showing the people who voted them, people who overwhelmingly support neutrality, showing that they also support neutrality. This is an opportunity for councillors to be on the right side of this.
Some of what the government will probably say to you is that we need adaptability to a changing world here. The current system, they would say, would be too restrictive for an increasingly precarious world, and that Ireland needs to be able to contribute to global security efforts more readily. What do you say to that, Niamh?
So I would say at the moment we are in a more heightened global instability, tension. We're closer to war with the normalisation of genocide, and it is now more than ever that we need safeguards to keep us out of war. And the triple lock is a safeguard that keeps Ireland out of illegal wars. And to remove it now at a time when we're closer to war than ever before is extremely reckless and dangerous. If the government wants to participate in peacekeeping missions, there are active at least 12. There were 11 now. There's a new one just being approved in Haiti. There are 12 active peacekeeping missions around the world, and Ireland can deploy on any of those missions without any impediment whatsoever. So we can still do our part. What we can't do with the triple lock, we cannot participate in NATO missions, in EU battle group deployments, and in war fighting. We can participate in all peacekeeping missions. And so the real question is, why does the government want to remove a piece of legislation that will allow Irish troops to deploy to war-fighting missions?
Well, they speak about the veto power of permanent members of the Security Council, such as Russia, I suppose, because they could prevent Irish participation in missions, even if the General Assembly agrees. That is another argument they come up with all of the time, Niamh.
Yeah, and that argument is false. So the way the government frames it, it's as though a mission is approved in the UN General Assembly in the Security Council in New York, and it's as though the 5 permanent members sit down and say, we veto Ireland participating in this mission. And that's simply not how it happens. The permanent 5 will approve a mission, as they've just done with Haiti, and then any country is free to deploy. So Ireland is not being vetoed by Russia, by the US. A mission may be vetoed, and we've seen very, very few vetoes. I've studied every single Russian Federation veto since the foundation of the Russian Federation. There has never once, ever been a veto by the Russian Federation of a peacekeeping mission. There was one veto by China in the 90s in relation to a peacekeeping mission in Macedonia. So this, the government say they're removing the triple lock to remove this, to deal with a so-called problem with a veto at the permanent 5. But that problem simply doesn't exist in respect of peacekeeping missions. There's only ever been one instance in the decades of peacekeeping service that Ireland has. Ireland has been deploying on peacekeeping missions since 1958. We've never once been precluded by a Russian veto, and there was only ever one China veto.
Every poll shows us that neutrality is very important to Irish people, but it does appear in recent years particularly that the government is playing fast and loose with neutrality. We're even sort of getting closer to NATO, even attending meetings, even though we're not part of NATO. Should we all be concerned about this?
We should be very concerned about this, Fran, and that's why we've been going around the country, and people, once they get the facts, are very concerned. We are, as you say, we're participating in the so-called Coalition of the Willing, which is a group of countries that, have come together and say they will deploy a force into Ukraine. Ireland is participating in that. We have a direct bilateral partnership with NATO in respect of cyber security. We have participated in some NATO-led missions, albeit less than the 12 that's required to involve the triple lock. But, by virtue of our membership of the European Union, and the European Union has said clearly that NATO is the cornerstone of European Union security, we are very, very close to NATO. It's really reckless that our government now seeks to revoke the triple lock. We've also had NATO generals come into Ireland. During the summer, we had a workshop in the Curragh for NATO generals. We've also had NATO come and observe Irish soldiers training in Fermoy. We've had French warships in Cove recently. We've had Dutch warships in Dublin. So it's really it's an urgent matter. Irish people believe in neutrality, and we have to demand of our government that it protects our neutrality and reaffirms it. Shannon Airport is another example where our neutrality is constantly being violated, with US military planes and sometimes German military planes flying through Shannon Airport on a daily basis.
All right, Niamh. Well, it'll be interesting to see what happens on Monday, but thanks very much for coming on with us today. Thank you.
Thank you, Fran.
Thank you. Good morning to you. That's Niamh Vrain there, who's researcher with the Transnational Institute and co-organiser of the Neutrality Roadshow. 1800 938 007.
Tipp FM's Tip Today.
With Slattery's Garage, Puck On. Main Peugeot dealers in the Premier County. And now stocking the full range of the luxury French car brand DS Automobiles. Book your test drive today with Slattery's Garage, Puck On. See slatterysgarage.ie.
Tipp FM's Tip Today.
With Slattery's Garage, Puck On. Over half a century driving the people of Tipperary and surrounding areas with quality, reliable and economical vehicles, new and used. Call the sales team today to discuss your next car or van on 067 24 111.
Thanks, Pat, and welcome back to the second hour of Tip Today. Now, one of our listeners on to say, "Hi, Fran, I'm sorry, but the way that Jewish lady was questioned about Gaza was out of line. Not all Jews are Israeli, no more than all Catholics are Irish. We are no more responsible for what the abuse the Catholic Church inflicted on Irish people. They also killed thousands, if not hundreds of thousands, directly and indirectly. Should every Catholic person be made answerable to what the Church did? How would an Irish Catholic person living abroad feel being questioned on air about whether they agree with the abuse the Catholic Church inflicted? Does it affect our daily lives? Does it matter to us? Basically, that poor woman was on to explain about Judaism in Ireland, and you tried to make it about Gaza, rage baiting. Whilst I completely condemn the ethnic cleansing of Gaza, I certainly don't blame every Jewish person, nor should any of us, nor are we responsible for what the Catholic Church did either." Thank you very much, Steve, for your WhatsApp, and thank you for your opinion. It would have been strange, though, in the current climate, if you speak to somebody representing elements of the Jewish community, not to ask about what's happening in Gaza. I mean, could you imagine if we spoke, and I mean, we're all very curious about the Jewish religion and about Jewish people. We don't know very much about it, and that was very much part of the interview. But can you imagine if I didn't ask her about that? I mean, what sort of correspondence would we be getting? I think she was treated with respect as well. She got annoyed herself, but there you go. Betty was on to say something similar, in fact. I understand what that woman is saying, Fran. I was an Irish immigrant in London when the IRA were bombing the cities in the UK. It was a very uncomfortable place to find yourself. I had to go to work every day with the nurses whose husbands were deployed in the north and in peacekeeping. Anyway, Betty goes on to say, my kids were in the same creche with their kids. We were part of the same community. Not once did any English person vent their anger on me or my family. They showed great understanding, just my experience, says Betty. Okay, and lots more coming in on that. Some people very cross with Sophia as well. Interesting response, it says here, from the Jewish lady. I was surprised at first, but on thinking about it, her response wasn't much different to ours in Southern Ireland during the Troubles. Fran, I grew up in the 60s and 70s and life carried on and it didn't affect us. Well, I'm not sure. It affected quite a few of us, I would say. But anyway, there you go. We leave that for the moment, but we will come back to it. Mr. Menswear, located on Friar Street in Cashel and Abbey Street in Kerr, giving us a €50 voucher to give away every single day this week. Now, if you want to win that voucher, all you have to do is text or WhatsApp 083 311 3311. If you put Mr. in there along with your name and your details, we will give that away in just a little while. Now, in yesterday's programme, Joe Hayes from Clean Line Farm Services in Tipperary Town discussed his concerns around the proposed increase in the commercial rates. But Peter Ward, great friend to the show for many years, from Country Living in Nina, made the point to Leanne that rates can be a positive thing if used in the right way. He joins me now. Good morning to you, Peter.
How are you, Fran?
I'm well indeed, and great to talk to you today. I'm really interested to have you tease that out for me. Rates and positivity, we normally don't hear those two things together, Peter.
I know, but I'm not the most spontaneous person in the world, and it's something that I've thought about, and it's something that I hold a very strong view on. I'm looking, I suppose I'm long enough here to remember a time when services were poor and footpaths were poor and car parking was poor and access to car parks was poor, and we hadn't, in my professional business life, we hadn't the most wonderful, or in an organisation, the Chamber of Commerce that I was involved in. I have nothing to do with it now and don't speak for it. I'm a member, but I don't speak for it. But in my time, I remember having a fractured relationship with the local authority regarding the provision of services that we required in the town. Look, I have to say to you, Fran, services have turned inside out in terms of improvements all over. And that's what I look at it. My pragmatic view in any business is investment, spend, reap the rewards. And that's the way I see it. Invest in your county, spend the money, and reap the rewards. And that has happened here for the last 5 to 7 years. I no doubt, Fran, I could give you a list the length of my arm, starting with the bridge at Ballina and working my way up as far as Portumna and Gary Kennedy and Terry Glass and Ardcroney and Portroe. And I look at those villages, look at the quality of life in them, look at the improvement in public realm. It has to be paid for. I would be horrified if we had slippage and if we went back and if we had a reduction in services in those areas and in our own area of Nina. We couldn't contemplate any reduction of services. It's better services we require.
It's a very interesting viewpoint, Peter, and a surprising one in a lot of ways, because I know that businesses are struggling. I mean, the cost of energy, for example, and then you add extra rates on top of all those extra costs as well. We've auto enrollments now, and we have, extra pay for employees. It can't be easy to run a business.
Fran, it's probably one of the most difficult times ever was to run a business, apart from the like of maybe 2008 or the recession in the early 80s. It is an extremely difficult time. Costs are crazy. I'm after buying a box of butter there this morning, and it's about 227, I think, for the box of a box of butter. Everybody knows the price of butter, but the reality is, Fran, I don't have the option to reduce my butter. Other people and my competitors can use things called Marvel, and they can use margarine, and they can use various fats. I'm in the butter business. Nina, as a town, is in the butter business. And I use butter as an analogy to say that you can't go out there and just cut back on the key important parts of your business. You must invent, or you must invest in your quality all the time. And that's what I see about the towns. When I was standing looking at the lights going on the other day, Sunday, here in the town, I remember going out with a little red receipt book, collecting £5 off shopkeepers, and dropped if somebody gave me £25 for Christmas lights in this town. And I remember the day that the Christmas lights went on the rates. And I cannot tell you, those three of us who used to collect the money from, the great joy to see those lights going on the other day and the rates paying for them, and to see the music and the public performance in the town. If I had to go out with that little receipt book and collect that money on the street, I could not get that money off people in the shops. I will tell you that, the cost of those. So I am delighted to see it evenly shared across the rate base, and then spent well by a vigilant municipality who is prepared to invest in the town. And I can't sit back, Fran, and I can't say, the council, the rates should be less and we should get more. I can't look at it like that. I'm looking at it as a pragmatist. If the money is spent well, and expediently.
Yeah.
And if we see the dividend in our free car parking in the car parks and the generous parking regime in the town, and I see the economic benefits of it in the town. Now, I do know our dear friends in the south of the county in Clonmel would be conscious of maybe some sort of a need for greater economics in the centre of their town. I understand that. I listen to that very much in your programme every day, and I understand that. But here in Neenah, we're lucky enough to have a lot of positivity and a lot of growth and a lot of good facilities coming online.
And do you think, Peter, because we're probably looking at a 5% increase every year over the term of this government, for example, will you be as positive about it in 2 or 3 years' time, do you think?
I'll tell you, I have to be. Because there's only one way to think, and that's positive. The answer is if we saw a drop, we have nothing in a business. You have nothing on only your economics, and you must mind your economics, right? And if economics starts to drop back by a fall in public realm or deterioration in the condition of our town, we have no facility to do business then. We must have positive economics. Economics is facilitated by wonderful services, and we must continue to have the best of services. We must have flowers on the pole. We must have festivals in the streets. We must have safely lit car parks accessible like we have, and more of them. And that's the only way forward, or else there is no way. If there was any cutback in a business and you got litter on your streets and a deterioration in public realm and more dereliction, we would all suffer. We wouldn't be able to pay the rates at any price.
And the other argument I'd love your view on, which is that, we all pay taxes directly or indirectly, so more funding should come from central coffers to the local authorities, and therefore we might need to hit the businesses as hard. What do you make of that?
Hey, that's an interesting viewpoint. I'm a great believer in paying my tax all my life. I like all my colleagues in business. That's very important. But when I drive around the town here and I see the improvement in Neenah Hospital, and when I look up and I see the new, should we call it, step-down centre, and I see the improvements and I see the buildings onto the schools in town, I know where my taxes are going. I never mind paying if I think the money is spent in an expedient matter, and if I see the investments within the town. And when I look around and I see an improving town, it must be facilitated and it must be paid for.
And I must point out, and as you know, we're very frequently in Neenah. I'll be there on Friday as well. Neenah's a fantastic town. It's doing extremely well, particularly by comparison with some other towns around the county. So you're coming at this from a slightly different angle than if a business person, as you alluded to earlier on, was speaking to me from Clonmel or Tipperary Town or Carrick-on-Suir.
Yes, I absolutely am. Fran, you probably are long enough in your job to remember me fighting with about peripheral development in this town and losing friends over the years, yes, and fighting the development of Stream outside and trying to get Aldi into the centre of the town instead of out where it is now. All those battles are part of the success of Neenah, and all my colleagues who were involved in the business organisations that fought to preserve the town centre of our town. And now I have to say I am grateful for the last 7 years or 8 years of a very open and visionary municipality who's prepared to invest in the town, and a willing business community of independent family businesses who keep their premises painted, keep their shops in good form, give good service and vary goods. And that's the key to this town, is independent family businesses on the street. And you get the cooperation with the municipal authority and you get a good town.
And what Councillor Davy Dunn said to me, that, making the suggestion that maybe the local authority needs to show savings in other areas where, maybe money is wasted in some way. Would you like to see more clarity on spending and the like as well, Peter?
Well, I remember one time my great friend that I worked closely with, Joseph Coleman O'Connor, saying to me one time that you'd want to have an actuarial brain to read a book of estimates. And I understand that. And I'm telling you, if somebody dropped a book of estimates on my desk, I would be ringing my accountant to come down and sit with me and go through the book of estimates, because I'm a shopkeeper and I know all about shopkeeping, but I don't know about the book of estimates, and I don't know even some of the structures used in local government for the calculation of costs and the allocation of budgets. But what I will say one thing to you: you must invest, you must keep investing, you must have a vision, and you must have a plan. And that's what's key. And if we don't get that, we cannot contemplate a reduction in any services at any cost.
Well, most interesting contribution. Peter, thank you for that. And if I don't see you before Christmas, happy Christmas to you, Peter.
Yeah, happy Christmas, Fran. Take care and drive safely on that road to Clonmel.
I certainly will. Look after yourself. Thanks, Peter. That's Peter Ward there from that wonderful business in Nina, Country Living. And what did you make of that? Interesting contribution, interesting opinion. I'm sure you'll agree. 083 311 3311.
Tipp FM's Tipp Today.
With Slattery's Garage, puck on. It's time to change. Test drive the award-winning range of Peugeot hybrids and fully electric vehicles at Slattery's Garage today. See slatterysgarage.ie.
Tipp FM's Tipp Today.
With Slattery's Garage, puck on. Main Peugeot dealers in the Premier County. And now stocking the full range of the luxury French car brand DS automobiles. Book your test drive today with Slattery's Garage, puck on. See slatterysgarage.ie.
And now, well done to Peter, it says here. That's referring to Peter Ward, who spoke to me just before the break there. Very knowledgeable assessment from his experience as a businessman in Nina. Well, let's go to Noel Madden now. Noel, good morning to you.
Good morning, Fran, and thank you very much for having me.
You're very welcome. Lovely to talk to you again, Noel. You say the increase in the commercial rates will not just affect businesses, but also customers. Do you mean that costs will be passed on to customers? Is that what you mean, Noel?
Definitely. Yes, Fran. I'll give an example. They've done nothing with Marketplace in the last couple of years. I'm 13 years living in Tipperary now, and I found when I first came here that was a thriving place. Now look at it now; it's as derelict as it comes.
It is, but it was purchased. So in fairness, we can't blame the local authority for that, because it was purchased commercially. So, we're waiting on something to happen where that is concerned.
But it's the rates, Fred. It's the
rates. Yeah,
rates.
Initially it was the rates that became a huge issue there. Yeah, because they were so expensive.
And still, it'll be like if anyone goes into the premises now, for instance, the rates are gone extravagant. Because I used to do sales, right? I used to do electricity sales, and I used to go into businesses like that. And I found that they were giving out mostly about electricity prices, rates, rental, stuff like that. And there was no maintenance being done.
And did you get a chance to? Were you listening to Peter Ward speaking to me there?
No, I didn't. I only came on
the
there now a few minutes ago. I had the radio on now. I didn't hear Peter Ward at all.
And well, shame on you. We'll have to give out to you over that. But Peter is a great old friend to the show over the years, and he's a very successful businessman in Nina. But he was making a very interesting point, and he said that rates can be a positive thing if used in the right way. And he said in Nina it is used in the right way, and he says services there are very good by comparison with years ago, in particular, footpaths, lights, all of this sort of thing.
No.
Yeah.
And
that has to be paid for, is basically what he's saying. Yeah.
What you quoted there, Peter Ward, I agree with what he's saying, yes. If it was put back into the town, but 9 times out of 10 you don't see it being put back into the town. You don't see it. Like, you see new footpaths going down here and see new footpaths going down here, back there, over here. Like, if they're doing something right, why don't they do it right?
And what you're not happy with you're not happy with how money is spent? Is that what you're saying to me? No.
Sorry?
You're not happy with how the money is spent? Is that what you're saying to me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Like, you walk down Marketplace there now, right? And it's as derelict, as I said.
Yeah.
It's as dead. And that, as I said to you, it used to be thriving. Every Christmas there used to be it.
Yeah, but the situation there now, though, is it's outside of the hands of the local authority where that is concerned until the guy who
authorities then should be putting pressure on your man that owns that premises to do something with it.
Well, we're hearing that they have been trying to do that for some time, and it's difficult. Yeah.
Like, was it there recently? There was a fire there in Marketplace.
I didn't hear about that. No. I didn't hear about that.
Not long ago. So I was in the town at the time, and we heard it was up there in Marketplace. Now, it didn't say specific what building. The question has to be asked, who's going to carry that call-out charge for the fire brigade?
And what else concerns you? You're in business yourself, Noel, aren't you?
Well, I was a sales rep, as I said, on doing electricity, broadband, credit card machines, stuff like that.
Right.
And I used to go into businesses like that. Not anymore.
Right. And what were you hearing from businesses that you went into? I mean, were they struggling?
Yes, struggling with the rates.
Yeah.
Like, it was one particular customer that could only pay half of the rates, say 1 month, another half the next month.
Yeah.
The rates used to be chaotic, they said. Now, I used to do rural areas, not the towns, the rural areas. And I found that some of them had to go and move out of the town. They just could not keep it going. So
you won't be surprised if you see businesses close down. Is that what you're saying?
Some of them, yeah. Small businesses that are just making a few pounds here and there just to keep themselves going. And it wouldn't surprise me if you don't hear businesses in 2026 closing. Because if the council goes along and puts up the rates in what they're saying, they're going to put them up. I believe it wasn't passed by the council their day at the meetings, I believe. But if it does get passed, you will see businesses closing, Fred.
Yeah, well, it probably will be, but in fact, it's good. The budget is going to have to be passed. Other than that, we were talking about dissolution of the council, which would be very unfortunate indeed. Yeah. So you're no longer in touch with businesses, are you, Noel?
Well, very little now. If I am, I might call into another one here and there. Now, I'd have a conversation with them and say, how are you doing in relation to the bills and stuff like that. But I'd always pass it on to my previous employer. Like he'd always have it.
Right. Yeah.
That sort of thing.
And compare where we are to maybe when you started out working. I mean, do you think, because again, Peter Ward said we're in a much better place in terms of how services are delivered and that kind of thing. Do you think we're in a worse position?
Well, to be honest, I don't know, friend, because as I said to you, I'm not in it anymore, so I don't know.
But even what you observe going around, though.
Well, it's very hard to know, friend, to be honest with you, so I don't know.
Yeah.
I hear an awful lot of things saying, oh, we're just ticking over nicely and we're just paying the bills, of course we get them, and things like that. That's what I'm hearing back.
People just getting by.
Just getting by, making a few pounds, paying the wages, stuff like that. But people are finding the pinch still.
And I suppose particularly at this time of year, Noel,
yes.
It's a very expensive time indeed. Yeah.
Now, I know it's a different topic altogether, but my wife went down to the local shop this morning. €4.30 for a tub of butter. Now, if the supplier is passing it onto the shop, the shop has to pass it on to the customer. And the customer finds the pinch. There's no help towards the cost of living as well when you think about it.
Yeah. And you think people are going to continue to struggle with the way things are. Noel, it's good to talk to you. Happy Christmas to you and yours, Noel. And thanks
very much, Fred. Thank you.
Thanks for talking to us today. Thank you. Good morning to you. And there's Noel Madden there. How do you feel about that? 1800 938 007. Speaking about costs, I had a what you call a tuna in one of these wrap things and a bowl of soup in a cafe. And what did I have? I had a cup of tea as well. Almost €18, which now I normally don't take much notice of spend. I take the change and I tend to be a bit dopey about stuff like that. But almost €18, and it really came out. I mean, things are getting really, really expensive out there, particularly if you like to go for a cup of coffee and a sandwich and that kind of thing. I wonder, what about your experiences of that? We'd love to hear from you. 083 311 3311.
If it matters to you, it matters to us. Call Tipp today on 1800 938 007. Tip FM's Tip Today.
With Slattery's Garage Puckon. Now is the time to pick up your next van. From the award-winning Peugeot Partner van to the Expert and the load-lugging Boxer van. We have big vans, high-roof vans, long wheelbase vans. You'll find them all at Slattery's Garage Puckon. See slatterysgarage.ie.
Join the conversation in Tipperary. Contact us through Facebook, Twitter, or email tiptoday@tipfm.com.
Our Mr. Menswear voucher is going to Eamon Fanny from Moneygall. Well done to you, Eamon. And our thanks indeed to our great friends at the hugely successful Mr. Menswear. And they're located on Friar Street in Cashel, Abbey Street in Care, and the ideal place to go indeed for Christmas prezzies. And if any of my lot are listening, sure, I wouldn't mind an old voucher for Mr. They're along the way. But well done to Eamon anyway, in the meantime. Regular contributor to the show, columnist Carl Clancy, is into day 4 of a 200-hour fast for the South Tipperary Hospice movement. And he joins me now. Good morning to you, Carl.
Good morning, Fran. How are you?
I'm well, but more importantly, how are you? Because last time round, August, I think, you did a 100-hour fast for Gaza. At that stage, I thought you were mad, but 200 hours, Carl.
Sure. I am a bit tapped, Fran. There's no denying that. I think anybody who knows me couldn't but agree with you there. Well, when I did the 100 hours, I thought, you know what? It wasn't easy, but it wasn't bad. And I didn't feel like it was the limit. So I said, you know what, we'll go again. And it's 4 days and 4 hours is 100 hours. So 8 days and 8 hours will be 200 hours. So I'm in day 4 and working away.
And what are you're having water, I hope, are you? You're having liquids, are you?
Because it's 8 days, I'm replenishing electrolytes. So basically, I'm taking a multivitamin and I'm taking something like Diorolite to make sure I don't just fall over sideways, because it's not quite that healthy to be doing that to your liver and kidneys for 8 days without any help.
Well, that's for sure. Now, last time round, you were working as well as fasting. I mean, what are you doing this time? So you're working and fasting?
I'm currently looking out at the Strand in Drogheda, where I am busy tunneling my way through a plant called sea buckthorn. It's a big, woody, gnarly mess, and I've got to go through the whole lot of it. So, yeah, I'm still at work.
But that sounds like, tough, laborious work. Are you not? Are you exhausted?
I'm a bit more tired this time than I was last time, but I'm also more hungry. It's a time of year thing. We want more in the cold weather to fuel us.
Yeah.
And the body is definitely saying, I passed a crisp vending machine last night, and I tell you, Jesus wasn't half as tempted as I was.
Oh, God, you poor thing. I can only imagine, indeed.
But you know what?
Yeah, sorry, Carl, yes.
I am absolutely... I learned 2 things sometime in the last 10 years. I learned how to be here, and I learned how to be grateful. And those 2 things mean I have an absolute overabundance of care, love, and I don't seem to need very much. So doing something like this is my way of just saying, whatever little bit I can do is one more thing that they don't have to do.
Does starving yourself and hunger, does it give you any particular insight into life or into...
It really can. I've been waxing philosophical now this morning as I've been doing this job and thinking, it's tough and it's arduous, but I'm here. I'm able. I'm healthy. There's nothing wrong with me. There's nothing wrong with anybody I know right now. And I've lost people to cancer. Close family. Wonderful friends. I've lost one teacher in the last 3 years to cancer. And that man was instrumental in shaping the not the adult, but certainly the mature adult I am today. He's a martial arts teacher that I knew. And just a great man. And when you lose people like that to cancer, it's then you realise how important something like hospice really is.
Yeah, and does it make you, because the last time I spoke to you as well, does it make you more emotional, Carol? Are you?
It has done the last couple of days.
Yeah.
certainly Noel that I'm working with would say, yeah, I was very cranky yesterday, but I seem to have turned the corner this morning, and I just feel positive, happy.
Yeah.
So after 100 hours, your body starts doing funny things. It starts releasing stem cells and fixing old injuries and cleaning out your body and doing repair to cartilage and repair to the vertebrae in my back that are in sore need. So within the next 4 days, I can look forward to actually feeling great. It's not the only time this has ever happened. I actually follow a guy who used to do a lot of pedestrian walking in the 1800s. Now, he used to walk insane amounts, like 70 miles in a day, or he did 1,000 miles in 1,000 hours without sleep. So he did all those things, and they said at the end of his 1,000 hours, he came in feeling and looking as though he had only just started, even though he looked like he was flagging about halfway through. So your body just adapts. And Fran, there's an little bit of padding that I put on between the summer and now that we wouldn't object if it was to depart the scene before Christmas.
Yeah, and, family and friends, what do they make of you doing this? Are they concerned about you, Carl?
No, A, they think I'm mad, and B, they think I'm selfish.
They said, no, just say that to me again, because I just last the latter one. They think you're mad, and they think what?
I'm selfish.
Selfish?
Selfish, because it's Christmas, it's the 1st of December, and Carl has decided that he's going to do a bloody fast for 8 days, which means the roses have to be kept away. They all feel guilty for eating. There's not a stew cooked in the house, and nobody is enjoying the first 8 days of Christmas, and they're blaming me. You know what?
Yeah,
I'm quite enjoying that.
How are you fundraising, by the way, for hospice? How does that work?
This is going through I Donate. So it's at everybody get a pen or get your phone out and open your browser. I'll give you a second there.
Yeah.
It's at www.iDonate.ie/fundraiser/200 hours for hospice.
Okay, you're going to have to give us that again before we leave you today.
I'll throw it up again.
Are you already making lots of dough for hospice? Is that working well so far?
I know that it's the first week in December and everybody's kind of counting their pennies up to Christmas. And people think they have to make grand gestures. They think it has to be 20, 50. No, euros are grand. If 1,000 people gave me €1, I'd have reached the target that I set. So if 100 people give me a tenner or 200 people give me a fiver, I'm happy out. So yes, we're making donations have been coming in. It's a thing because it's run through Facebook. It's only your own friend group who's going to see it unless you publicise it. And that's why I'm really grateful for the opportunity to be able to come on this morning and get out to the listeners and hopefully cajole some of them into saying, look, a fiver's not going to kill us. Now, for some people, you haven't got fiver. Fair enough. If you have a Facebook, share it and ask your friends if they have a fiver. That's all I ask.
Well, I think you're going to get huge support for this because, the work that hospice does, and God knows they've been doing so. I think about 30 years now, South Tipperary Hospice.
It's the thing that I was talking to Terry on Monday in hospice, and she said it's actually nice to get a phone call that doesn't have the weight attached to it.
Oh, yeah.
Because every phone call they get is a tough day at the office. And everything they do is trying to make lives easier when they're not easy, at their worst, to try to bring some light into somebody's life and into families. And I know my own extended family has had experience of counselling organised by hospice, home visits organised by hospice. I know they do pain relief through acupuncture and alternative therapies and complementary therapies. They have wonderful volunteers, but all of that comes at a price. There's no such thing as a free lunch.
Yeah, and all of their services with respect and compassion and dignity and all of that, which is so important. Will you just give that?
They do something I couldn't do.
Oh, for certain, absolutely for certain. Whenever I speak to hospice nurses, they're genuinely, and not to be, patronising to them, genuinely special people. They have to be, indeed.
I know some palliative care nurses, and they're some of the most wonderful people. They saw to my dad when he was dying, and they couldn't have been better. When you get a phone call asking on your dad's last days, what does he like to read? And I said, the Irish Field. And they said, grand, we'll read it to him.
Wow.
So you don't get that unless you care.
Carl, give me your I Donate again, because people might have found a pencil finally.
It's www.I, the letter I, donate, DONATE, .ie/fundraiser /200, that's 200, hours for hospice.
All right.
And it's specifically for the South Tipperary hospice movement.
All right, very good indeed. And Leanne will have those details just in case you missed them there. Just before I let you go, I was looking at your piece in this week's version of the Nationalist, and you say children will remember the atmosphere, the love and the spirit of Christmas for life. Remember that this year.
Yeah. I remember about 2 gifts I got as a child. But I remember the warm fire and the excitement and the coziness and the hot tea and the fresh white toast and the butter on Christmas morning. I remember that. I remember my parents, who had virtually nothing, scraping together whatever they could to get you maybe 1 gift, 2 if you were particularly lucky. And you remember the 1. You won't remember anything after 2. So anybody who's getting their kid 10 or 15 gifts, 13 of them are irrelevant.
It's a very good point indeed, but the love is what they'll remember, as you say, and the whole spirit of Christmas and all of that.
Absolutely. And I grew up in a horrendous environment. I'm not afraid to say it, but I still remember Christmas being special.
Well, Carl, we wish you the very best. We'll check in with you again over the next couple of days, if that's okay.
If I'm still standing, it'll be grand.
I'm certain you'll be still standing. You look after yourself, Carl. Thank you.
I'll do my best. Thank you very much.
Bye-bye. It's the great Carl Clancy there. We wish him well. Day 4 of his 200-hour fast for the South Tipperary Hospice.
Tip FM's Tip Today.
With Slattery's Garage Puckon. Now is the time to pick up your next van. From the award-winning Peugeot Partner van to the expert and the load-lugging Boxer van. We have big vans, high roof vans, long wheelbase vans. You'll find them all at Slattery's Garage Puckon. See slatterysgarage.ie.
Tip FM's Tip Today.
With Slattery's Garage Puckon. Over half a century driving the people of Tipperary and surrounding areas with quality, reliable and economical vehicles, new and used. Call the sales team today to discuss your next car or van on 067 24 111.
Welcome back to the final hour of Tip Today. Thanks, Pat. We have a pair of tickets to give away to Pints in the Field, or Pints in a Field. The two Johnnies, of course, and their wonderful extravaganza that's happening next summer. I was speaking to Johnny B yesterday, and he kind of gave us 2 tickets. So if you want to get involved in that, we're looking for another finalist today. And all you have to do is text Pints in a Field or 2 Johnnies or whatever to 083 311 3311, and we'll have the draw for the finalist towards the end of the programme. Now, last week Maggie Butler was presented with the 2025 Tipperary Carer of the Year Award, and tributes were paid to her lovely son Alex, who recently passed away at the age of 14. I'm delighted to be joined in the studio now by Maggie and Councillor Richard Malloy as well, Carers Support Manager with Family Cares Ireland. Good morning to you both, and thanks for coming in to us.
Good morning.
Maggie, first of all, sympathies, condolences to you on the loss of Alex. You were telling me just off air towards the end, you knew he was slipping away.
We did, Fran. Yeah. So about May time, I suppose, Alex, we noticed he was losing weight, even though he was judge fed, so he was fed directly into his lower intestine. So his feet had stayed the same, his weight shouldn't have been dropping off. And Alex, as you know, had a tracheostomy and was ventilated, but could manage some time off the ventilator. And literally overnight that just stopped. He couldn't breathe on his own without the ventilator. Literally every time he took it off, he just wasn't making any effort to breathe. So around that time he was due to go up for I suppose sleep studies and checkups and all the rest, and we were actually waiting on a bed. And I remember our outreach nurse came out one day, Leanne, who's amazing, absolutely amazing. But anyway, she came out one day and I remember saying to her, things aren't good, Leanne, you know, and I don't know if us bringing him to the hospital is doing the right thing. I think we're not going to get him home. And that would have been a nightmare. So we organised a meeting with his palliative care team and had a good discussion and went through all of the bits that were changing with him, and it just transpired that he was in respiratory failure and gut failure. So the team that you spoke about just before us, actually, the South Tipp hospice team, came on board at the end of May, and he gradually deteriorated and passed away on the 28th of October at home, thank God. Yeah.
At the age of 14, and those 14 years, it was a roller coaster right from the very start. Of course, twins born to you. Sadly, Alex had those issues. Would you would you mind telling us about those issues that he had from birth?
So I suppose
Maggie?
they were born prematurely. So they were born at 28 weeks, and Alex had trauma, I suppose, to his brain. They don't know if it was a stroke or bleed on the brain or lack of oxygen or what it was, but as a result he had quadriplegic cerebral palsy, and he was probably one of the most complex children you could meet on paper. I think every medical team that met him feared him on paper, and then when they met him in person he was magic. He was magic, but he was really complex. So he had seizures and he was JEG fed, and his cerebral palsy meant that his tone was quite high, so his muscles were quite tight in his limbs, but it also meant that his core was quite weak, so his gut was weak and his lungs were weak, and a lot of it came from the brain and then some of it came from muscles. And he just deteriorated over the years. Throughout
the 14 years, I mean, you had so many emergencies, Maggie. I remember you telling me about this, dashing to Dublin, dashing here and there, and, almost losing him and then him coming back. It as I say, a roller coaster describes it, doesn't it?
It was a roller coaster. We always said he was the driver of the roller coaster, and we just followed. We went along for the ride, Fran, and that was it. Yeah. He guided us all the way.
You were kind enough to have me in your home a few years ago, and I couldn't get over the love in the place to begin with. But also, I mean, even though he wasn't verbal, I mean, there was charisma there, there was character there.
Oh my God, yeah. He was... Alex had a whole team of buddies, some of them guards, some of them motorbikes, some of them it was just, we had visitors all the time in our house. And one of his guard buddies, actually, after he passed away, described it as the Alex effect, that you couldn't but be happy in the room, and you go in there and your troubles and your everything just washed away, because he just gave you a smile and everything else faded away. But he was a rogue. He loved the trouble and the pranks and the messing, and yeah.
The relationship with his twin Adam, then, I mean, that was a unique bond, wasn't it? I mean, really unique.
Yeah. It was, again, I suppose I'm using the word magic, but it really was. They were so close and they were so in tune with each other, and it was amazing to see it. It really was. We were privileged.
Richie, there was no doubt about the Carer of the Year 2025.
Absolutely. And just to pay a tribute on behalf of Family Carers Ireland again to Maggie for, I suppose, winning the award and coming here this morning to talk about what it is like to be, the life of a family carer is not an easy one. But it was kind of sad that particular week when the judges had come up with Maggie as this year's winner. And, just to mention, Maggie had won it over 10 years ago. Yeah. So it was interesting again that 10 years later, where were you then? And that was the week actually Alex passed away when the presentation had been organised. So when I called out to visit the house there last week to present Maggie with the prize, as you say, Fran, it's a lovely house, and the room itself with Alex and all the mementos there and the little blue heroes uniform up on the wall, I thought was struck a particular chord. But I think Maggie represents the thousands of carers across Tipperary and across the country, the kind of love they have for the person they're looking after 24/7. And we were reflecting there last week, in the 10 years since Maggie last won it, services are still fairly strange. Okay, you could welcome the fact that this means test is finally going to be abolished. But it's important to remember that carers only got an extra €10 in the budget kicking in January. And the costs of heating, in a case like Alex's now in particular, the heating costs for the average family carer is massive.
And literally overnight, Maggie, you became a carer of somebody who had profound issues.
Yeah.
So the battle started then, didn't it, for services? And was it a battle, literally?
It was a battle for certain services, and then I suppose once you got in, the support we got, even in the end, in terms of medically, we could have never had Alex at home without the help we had. It wouldn't have been possible. It just would not have been possible. But in terms of, for context, Alex passed away and we had an electricity bill of €1,000.
Wow.
Yeah. So Alex's room, it was an ICU at home, Fran, And that is the only way to describe it. It was an ICU at home.
And those sort of bills, constant bills.
Yeah. So it's funny, actually, a couple of months before Alex died, his feeding tube blocked as part of this gut failure, and he wasn't well enough to take him up in the car, obviously. So only in true Alex fashion, he had 3 ambulances on standby dotted around the country for him. So he had the Order of Malta in Wexford, he had the Red Cross in Cashel, and he had his Garda buddies had one on standby in Dublin. So the ambulance from Wexford came to take him up for his feeding tube. And we have a dry circuit that Alex goes on, so it's a ventilator, but it's very dry on his airway, and he doesn't cope very well with it. So ideally he needs to be on the humidified one, which is moist, and it's more comfortable for him. And the ambulance plugged everything out of the back of it, and his ventilator would not run. There wasn't enough power in the back of the ambulance to run his equipment.
My God.
He had to go on the dry circuit. So that will tell you the power that his room uses every day.
And can I ask you how you deal with costs like that, Maggie?
I don't know, Fran. You just keep going and you keep chipping away at it, and you get, is it €62, Richie, you get through the household budget?
Yeah, 66. When I'm always saying it from the carers' point of view, financially, like the carers allowance at the moment is around €260, I think, a week. It works out, if you multiply that out, it's probably €1.20 per hour.
Yeah.
Nobody wants to be the family carer. It's just something that happens. And, just to mention, your husband Michael and your own family, it's the family really that have to do the bulk.
And it's the knock-on effect. Alex had tracheostomy and was ventilated and needed 2 trained persons with him at all times. So that meant Michael couldn't work. There's nothing in place for somebody who can't work because they can't work. He couldn't. And then when your child is dying, you can't work. You want to be with them at all times. So there isn't anything in place. And funny enough, we kept going about solar panels because they had a scheme in place years ago, solar panels for medically vulnerable customers. And we went to everybody we could think of, and we were hitting brick walls all the way along. And the week after Alex passed, we got a letter to say they were reinstating the scheme.
My God, it would have been an education for any, particularly politician, local representative, whatever, to visit your home.
Absolutely.
To come in and see what it was like for you.
Absolutely, Fran. And the invitation was there.
Tell me about that. Tell me about that invitation that went out.
So we had contacted local representatives, and actually Seamus Healy came out. I'll be straight up and I'll tell you, Seamus Healy came because we couldn't leave our home. And he asked us, would we come in and have a chat with him? And we said, we can't. So he came out and came and met Alex and met us. And he said he was going to discuss the case in the Dáil. And he did. And I issued an invitation to any representative from any political party to come before the budget and see us. Come and see the house, come visit and sit and talk to us about carers. And nobody visited. Nobody.
And that's the important. I think, I noticed in the last 12 months or so when people are applying for the carers allowance, a lot of people are being turned down now on paper. And we're always saying if the same inspectors went out to the house, see what it's like on the ground. Very hard to write some of these things up, what you're doing for the person 24/7. But I think the whole thing is inspectors in general, if they go out to the houses, they'll see very well. But
this
stand
is
in your
it. Go
shoes
and
for a
visit.
week.
Go and come and see.
Yeah, and that's because, as you said, it was like an ICU unit.
Why wasn't there an appetite to take you up on that invitation, do you think, Maggie?
I don't know, Fran. I don't know. There's just not enough interest. There's not enough interest
I've said it to Richie on occasions. Coming up to general elections, God knows, carers are wonderful. You're all fantastic. They're patting you on the head and they're saying how wonderful you are and how you're going to be looked after. And then it seems to be forgotten about.
It is forgotten about. But it's forgotten about because as hard as and don't get me wrong, we have the most amazing memories. And I would not change one day of that 14 years. And they know that. They know I'm not going to drop Alex into hospital and say I can't do this. That was never going to happen.
That's where it kind of comes down to, I think, for a carer. It's like I was saying there this morning that there's a protest outside the Dáil next Tuesday. I think it's been organised by the Disability Federation. It's to do with disabilities and how they felt they were left down in the budget. So Family Carers Ireland will also be part of that. But the biggest difficulty, if I was to go back over all the years that I'm involved in this, when the marches are on above in Dublin, the carer that's at home, like Maggie and her husband Michael, how can they really travel to Dublin to protest outside Kildare Street? So you end up with a small protest. And I think when politicians, are looking out the doors of Leinster House and they say this small handful of people, it doesn't create the impact that, say, in fairness to the IFA or the bigger organisations, if they protest, they nearly stop everything in the city for that morning.
And carers can't do that.
Can never
like, I could, even down to meeting Seamus Healy, like, we couldn't physically come into Clonmel to meet him,
But I'm just thinking, I mean, how much more powerful could you get than Maggie's story, for example? Even if you saw thousands of people, I mean, that story is so.
No, absolutely.
Powerful,
There'd be very few carers, and I've met a lot of family carers over the years, but your story, Matt, will be very intense. There is a lot of people, I suppose, a small number is really 24/7. You can't literally go outside the door, and you certainly can't be going to Dublin for protests and that. And I suppose I do. I probably should say, I work with a lot of the local Oireachtas members. Say, Matty McGrath, Michael Murphy, and Seamus Healy, and I find locally people know the story, they're very pro it. But whatever seems to happen at the national level, like the Ministers for Finance of the day, I mean, to come out with the budget and say, we're giving you an extra €10, I mean, to be hard to go dancing about that. While they're going on and on about the means has been abolished, but that won't help the thousands of carers that are actually on the carers allowance.
No, and I know, like, sitting here today, I know that there are so many other carers on their knees now. And the other side of it is, leaving out the whole money side of it, like, we've lost Alex now, we've lost that massive part of our lives. But where do I go from here? I'm 14 years unemployed now. On paper, I'm 14 years unemployed.
And where do you go from here, Maggie? And
I suppose that is something that family carers are in the last couple of years. They've brought in this programme. It's and the budget, of course, needed to say is limited on that. It's to try and help carers like Maggie to get back into the workforce. So I would say to people that will be listening this morning, because it is a big shock when you're doing it for 14 years, you say, Maggie, and suddenly you have all the practical experience in the world, but you might have
nothing
very
on
little
paper.
on paper.
Yeah.
So I'd say to listeners this morning to ring Family Carers Ireland or go onto our website. It's familycarers.ie, and avail of that program. It's just a program about kind of helping you prepare a CV, maybe getting you back into a court, because confidence can be a big factor. I mean, Maggie, she's younger than the two of us, Fran, I think we'll put it that way. But, you know, you have a long way to go. And like I find when carers ring, they'd be shocked sometimes. The allowances stop. After 3 months.
Everything stops.
You know,
and it's quite. I guess it's quite a mixture of emotions for you. There's grieving for Alex, but there's that void, that physical void.
Yeah, absolutely,
well.
absolutely. It's you're grieving for Alex, and it's a whole life you're grieving as well, Fran. Like, I mean, our house was never empty. You know, we were always chasing appointments or having nurses visit, or you know, Mondays and Fridays were crazy in our house because you'd all the teams visiting on a Monday after the weekend, and then they'd want to visit on the Friday before the weekend, and that just stops. Like, it's just.
It's the silence, I think, that when carers ring.
Yeah, and you said that to me off air as well. There's that silence there, even though Alex wasn't verbal.
Yeah,
there was a silence
my God,
there.
he wasn't non-verbal, but it was such a huge presence there all the time. Like, but again, I'd extend an invitation, let anyone come and sit and talk to me and get something in place for carers, something practical as well as money.
Yes.
You know?
Will you stay involved with carers,
absolutely.
Maggie?
And we'll be glad to have, because I think Maggie, you know, I was just saying to Maggie, as an advocate now going forward, you know, you'll have more time, because it's very hard for the person that's actually caring.
You can't. It's impossible. You just don't. You don't have the time, and you don't have the headspace, because you've spent all day sorting meds and feeds and chasing appointments and looking at what you have to do next week, and you've other kids to slot in around all of that as well, like, so you just you don't have time.
And what was that like as a family, because naturally the spotlight was on Alex all of the time. And was that difficult for the other family members?
Oh, look, the kids missed out over the years. There was sudden cancellations of things, but they were amazing. They were just, and I want to say it again, I'm just so proud of them all the way through it, like all the way through it. They were just so good, so
the night
good.
Of the funeral, I think there was great community spirit out there. You know, you had the marquee set up, all the neighbours were around, you know, and it's lovely to see that, because I mean, you could see the whole community.
And that was it, actually. One of the kids said to us, it was that night, everything had gone quiet and we were sitting around, and one of the kids said, "Ma'am, we knew he was loved, but oh my God, he was so loved." Like, and we're still getting messages, still to this day, about his smile and how much he'll be missed and how much of an impact he made. It's lovely. It's so nice. Like.
Yes, and I see on social media in particular, I mean, the outpouring.
Yeah, people are great. People are just
incredible.
We were so lucky.
Are you cross at the end of it all, Maggie, as well? Are you, you know?
Yeah, I get days where I am cross, and I get days where I'm just like, there's days when I think, why would you give somebody like Alex for 14 years and then take him away? And then I think, weren't we so lucky to have him for those 14 years, you know? So it's a mix. It's a roller coaster, Fran. There's that word again. It's a roller coaster, yeah.
I'm sure it is indeed. But as Richie pointed out, your community, very, very important to you as well. They've been
and we're so lucky. We're so lucky. Like, we had, the neighbours must have thought, with the guards that were up and down the road for his funeral, we had bikers doing Guards of Honour, and there was the guards were doing Guards of Honour, and we had the Order of Malta and the Red Cross, and it was just, again, just to see the amount of people that he made an impact on. It was just...
You'd have all the usual milestones, but of course we're coming up to one of the big ones, which is Christmas. That'll be particularly difficult, I would imagine. Did he love Christmas?
He did. He loved Christmas. He loved the lights. And my dad passed away in May as well, so it's a different year. But we'll get there.
His twin Adam, how's he doing?
He's good. Yeah, Adam is doing good. Adam, as I said, they're all just amazing. I suppose we knew it was coming, which I suppose gave us the advantage. We all got to say our goodbyes. We spent our time with him. Anything we wanted to say, we got to say. And he worked it out so perfectly that everybody that needed to be there was there, including his first Garda buddy from 9 years ago who was in the house that night. Wow. So it was like he wanted it that way, and that was it. Yeah.
While, Richie, you and I, we always talk about the difficulties, I suppose, of caring and all of that, but you're in a privileged position, if you don't mind my saying so, Richie. You meet remarkable people, and saving her blushes, the likes of.
Well, you do, because I remember meeting Maggie going back to 10 years ago, and even before that, I suppose. And you meet and I obviously get, like, when you do call to carers' houses, like, I mean, the people are lovely, and sometimes you have so little to offer. That's what kills me, really. Sometimes you can really only give a listening ear a lot of the time, really, and people to be appreciated.
Sometimes that's nearly the most important thing at times.
We've had some great, like, I remember, I don't know if she's listening this morning now, but there was a Rebecca Quirk out there, and Mona May, her Townsend always sticks in my mind. But just she'd won the Munster carer at the time, and I mean that was the same thing again, like, it's hard not to be cross if you're a family carer, really. But there again, for her, it was her husband she was looking after for many long years. It was probably harder there because in a case like that, all her children had grown up, so it was really like your house is still a very active house.
Yeah.
I mean,
madhouse, Richie is the word you're looking for.
You've all that, but it has been a privilege over the years. And I mean, really, anyone that becomes, no one sets out to be the family carer. It just happens. I mean, someone's in an accident, someone is born.
This is it. It could happen. Anybody. In the morning.
And I should say, Fran,
really
just while we're talking, there's a group of carers I've set up. Maybe Maggie might join it now in time to come, but it's a family carers choir that was set up there last year. And they were here actually in the studios here last Christmas now, but they practice. It's really a group of carers that came together, and they were tired of meetings and all that kind of stuff, so they decided, let's form a choir. So they meet every Friday in Old St. Mary's Church for an hour, and they perform there, and they've been invited to nursing homes around the area and so on. But I suppose if you're the carer, I'd say the big thing is to make sure you get some breaks yourself.
Exactly.
Because it's very easy to burn out.
And I was going to ask you that before we finish up. There may be people listening to us who have recently become a carer, for instance. Advice, Maggie, would be what?
Oh, God. Like Richie said, even if you just take 5 or 10 minutes, try and get that 5 or 10 minutes for yourself. And I suppose the big thing is, don't fret on the smaller things, because when I look at the things I stressed over the last few months, and they don't matter. They really don't, So, yeah.
Well, Maggie, once again, condolences to you and your family on the loss of Alex.
Thank you, Fran. And thank you for everything to Tipp FM over the years. You've been amazing. Thank you.
You're very kind, and good to see you today. Thanks, Richie. And thanks for organising that we would meet Maggie this morning as well. Thanks very much indeed. We'll take a break. We're back with more in just a moment.
Tipp FM's Tipp Today.
With Slattery's Garage Puck-On. Now is the time to pick up your next van. From the award-winning Peugeot Partner van to the expert and the load-lugging Boxer van. We have big vans, high-roof vans, long-wheelbase vans. You'll find them all at Slattery's Garage Puck-On. See slatterysgarage.ie.
Tipp FM's Tipp Today.
With Slattery's Garage Puck-On. It's time to change. Test drive the award-winning range of Peugeot hybrids and fully electric vehicles at Slattery's Garage today. See slatterysgarage.ie.
Now, welcome back to Tipp Today. Huge amount of text and WhatsApp coming in to us about Maggie there and her family, and lots of sympathy and condolences coming in for Maggie Butler as well. I'm delighted to be joined in the studio now by John G. O'Dwyer. Good morning to you, John.
Good morning, Fran. How are you?
This is the first in a series of kind of talks we're going to have, John.
Yeah.
Would you just sum up what we're going to do over the next while?
We're going to look, I think, at Irish history. And I suppose an awful lot of people, and I was in college and I was to teach heritage, and I'd say how many people liked history in school. And 3/4 would say no, it was very dry and boring. But what we're going to do, I think, over 8 episodes, we're going to look at all of Irish history. And what we're going to look for is the great stories, the stories about people. I'm trying to prove that history can be really interesting, and if at the end of the eight episodes, if people still think history is boring, then I have failed. But hopefully I won't think, and we're off air there, we were discussing some of the stories, and you're already seeing some of how interesting some of the stuff can be.
So I'm going to start kind of really at the start with pre-Christian Ireland. Now give me a time scale on this. What are we talking about?
We're talking about when the first people came into Ireland. Now, There's no written evidence of that, but that would have been about 8,000 years ago. That's when we have evidence. Now, that's interesting because you would say Irish history has a not very long history. Well, we do in some respects, but it's actually the shortest history in Europe because people came in to other parts of Europe much earlier. They came out of Africa about 100,000 years ago. They were in France 50,000 years ago. They only came into Ireland about 8,000 years ago. So why is that? And there's a very clear answer to that. The Ice Age. Ireland was covered in ice sheets up to about 10,000 years ago, so it wasn't habitable. So even the people in France, there was no Ice Age there, it was cold, but they still managed to survive. So it was only about 8,000 years ago when the ice retreated that these people actually came into Ireland. Now, we were then, during the Ice Age, we were attached to Scotland, and most people think, actually, they probably walked in. They came from Scotland all right, but they didn't, because once the ice melted, the sea levels rose, as you'd expect, and cut us off. So they probably came in canoes and longboats. But what's also interesting about this period is there is no written record. So if we look back to anyone from that period, Cú Chulainn, Fionn McCool, if they existed, the children of Lear, none of those people could read or write. Nobody could read or write. Reading, the ability to read and write came in with Christianity in the 5th century to Ireland.
Right, but we were late to that,
we were late then, because mostly was spread by the Roman Empire, and the Romans were in Britain for 600 or 700 years before that. They were spreading across Europe for about 1,000 years, and 'twas they brought the basis of oral language now, which is the Latin alphabet. Right. They brought that into those areas, but it came to Ireland then relatively late
because the Romans
because
didn't come
of
here, of
the
course,
ice sheets. That was
What environment did those first settlers come to here?
A terrible environment, really, and it was very difficult. So, in other words, if one of the Tipp hurlers came in here and he was retired, he was around 35, you'd say a young fella. In those days, you'd say he'd have one leg in the grave. That would have been the thing about him. People lived that very, very few people would survive beyond 40. So why? What is Ireland like? It was covered in forests. Wolves and bears roamed the forests. And the people who came in were hunter-gatherers. They weren't farmers. They didn't settle down. And for a bit of safety, maybe, and to find their way, they stayed near the rivers. They stayed near the coast. They were probably largely afraid to go into the forests and that. And their life would have been very short. And when they ran out of food in one area, they moved on to another area, with the result that they left very little behind them. They lived in kind of tents that were made from animal skins.
Was this Stone Age?
Yes, well, it is. This is what you call, I don't want to getting into too much technical stuff, but this is what you call the Mesolithic period, when people were Stone Age and they were hunter-gatherers. And then we go to the Neolithic period, and this is when people settle down, and there's a huge change in society, and they become farmers, they become wealthier, and then they have the time and the ability to create great monuments in stone.
Okay, and tell us about some of those monuments, because we would know of many of them.
We know of many of them. Maybe one that's less known but is very important, I think, is the Cage of Fields. The Cage of Fields. Okay. Now, why is that important? Because what happened there was people obviously there, and they settled down and they set up field systems. But what happened then was, up in East Northwest Mayo, climate is fairly wet, it got wetter, and that created bogs. And gradually they were driven out because blanket bogs came in over all their fields. So the fields remained lost there for about 5,000 years, and then an archaeologist called Seamus Caulfield was on his own father's land, and he discovered these field systems. So he peeled back the bog, and there was the field system, one of the oldest field systems in Europe, and proof positive that about 4,000 years ago people had field systems, they were growing crops, and there was no native cows around. They had imported cows into Ireland as well as that, and of course cows and cattle became almost sacred animals. Think of the Tawnbo Coigna, the prize bull of Ulster. The cattle were terribly important to the Celtic people. So that was the start, and then they became more sophisticated, they became a bit richer, they had better sources of food than the hunter-gatherers, and then for some reason, we don't know what the motivation was, they began to build huge monuments, and these monuments were mostly burial monuments. There's about 1,500 of them around the country, but one of the great ones, of course, is up at Newgrange. And history is circular, because what did these people do with their dead? They cremated them. Then when Christianity came in, the Christian philosophy didn't like that, and so people were actually buried and not cremated. And now history is a full circle. We're probably in a bit of a post-Christian society. And what do you find? That cremation is back again. It's fascinating. But just to say, we have examples of that in Tipperary as well. And I think, I don't know if you've heard about Knockrow.
Sure.
Yeah,
yes.
you've heard about that. It's out near Grange Moker.
Yeah.
And it's a megalithic burial site. And it's ahead of Newgrange. And I'll tell you why. It's not as big, but we have one up on Newgrange, because while the sun on the equinox shines in and illuminates the chamber in Newgrange in the morning, right? It does it in the morning and in the evening at Knockrow. And there's a big tradition now building up, and people gather there just as much as Newgrange, they gather there for the solstice as well.
What inspired those? Like Newgrange and the like. What inspired that? Because there are similarities to what was in England and Britain, was there not?
In Stonehenge and that.
Yeah.
It's the question. We don't really know, and people are struggling with that. I suppose once you have food, clothing and shelter, you begin to think about putting meaning into life, putting ritual into life. And they seemed very important people. It seemed terribly important that they buried them. Of course, they would have believed in lots of gods. That might have appeased the gods, that kind of thing. And they would also, people, after a while then, once they become a little bit better off, they create rituals, a kind of a bringing things together. And Newgrange would have been the ultimate. Now, the motivation, though, because remember, there was no horses in Ireland when they built Newgrange, so those thrones had to be all dragged in by humans, dragged up the hill. Might have been brought down the bind, but they had to be dragged up the hill. So when a guy is sweating and he's, on his last legs dragging these stones up, what's motivating to say, I saw this,
But you're all, and even still at this point, could they not read and write?
They could not, no. Okay. They could not.
So how did they do the mathematics?
That's what I don't know. How did they know exactly where the sun will rise on the 21st? Because they couldn't write it down so that you could pass it on to the next. Now, maybe what they would have done is they would have built some very simple monument pointing to exactly where the sun was on the, on the 21st, where it would be. They might have done that. But there's all these things.
But is it not much more precise than that, John?
Well,
I suppose very precise, isn't it?
Probably not, because remember, the thing is, everybody says it's on the 21st, but it's not as precise as that. I mean, the sun floods the chamber from about the 17th or 18th until about Christmas Day, if you were in there.
It's
not that precise. You get the biggest illumination on the 21st, so it's pretty precise, but you could, you can go in there on the 19th and you might have much the same experience. But there's all these fascinating things, and I'm not an archaeologist or a historian in that sense of the word, but fascinating questions about our prehistory.
That's for sure. Would you stay with me, because I need to take a break. We'll be right back in just a few moments.
Tipp FM's Tipp Today.
With Slattery's Garage, Puckon. It's time to change. Test drive the award-winning range of Peugeot hybrids and fully electric vehicles at Slattery's Garage today. See slatterysgarage.ie.
If it matters to you, it matters to us. Call Tipp today on 1-800-938-007.
Now, you're very welcome back. John G. O'Dwyer is still with me. We're talking about pre-Christian Ireland. We're sort of up to the Bronze Age, I think, at this point, are we, John?
Yeah, and that's a huge change.
Yeah.
Because it's the first time up to that you're working in stone. There's not so much you can do with stone. All you can do is cut down stone, sharpen it and that. But now you can, with metal, you can create exactly what you want with a mould. So if you have a mould of a dagger, you can create 100 daggers. And that means then, and this kind of then bronze, it's a lot better. It works a lot better than stone. It's much sharper. So it would have been easier. At this stage now, what you're finding is people are beginning to control their environment. So the great forests are being cut down in Ireland and to create farmland. And that then is helped very much by the coming of bronze. So you can have better access. But not only that, then people are getting that little bit richer. So they begin to think about their status. And one way then is, I know an interesting thing. Have you ever thought about it? You know the way gold, people go around the world and they almost kill each other. They have been killing each other for centuries over gold.
Sure.
Gold is actually the most useless of all metals.
It's a soft metal, isn't it?
It's completely soft. You can do nothing with it. But what you can do is you can use it for ornamentation. And therefore they seem to be used in collars and clasps and pins and necklaces. And they seem to be used to denote status, There was some kind, like, people do tend to create a pecking order, and people like to show off. So the nearest thing you can say to that today, which I don't have, but you probably have, Fran, a Rolex watch. You come in and flash the Rolex watch. My old Timex is here, never mind. So I've been the bottom.
So it was a status
It's the Rolex watch. It's that kind of thing. It's the branded stuff. We created some wonderful, in fact, a lot of people don't think of it. In the Bronze Age, probably the best goldsmiths were in Ireland. But of course, a lot of the stuff was lost, and I'll tell you why. Because when it was rediscovered in the medieval period, people were poor. So you saw an old gold collar, that's not much good. But I could sell this as gold, turn it into something else. So you brought it to a goldsmith, and they melted it down and paid you for it. So a lot has been lost, but there is still a lot of it around. Beautiful stuff. We'll say the Boris No collar now. That was found up on the Devil's Picture. The time we nearly killed you up the Devil's Picture. Well, it wasn't too far from there. Try not to remember it. That's the sort of thing that you have. The Boris No collar was found there all over the country in the National Museum. And most people think, all the time they look at the Derry Flan, Chalice the Arda, Chalice the Cross of Cong, and that as the great examples of artistry in Ireland. But go back to the Bronze Age, some of the most superb workers in gold were in Ireland, and whatever seemed to motivate them it was the people who wanted status, and these people then were buried with their gold.
So obviously pre-Christian. So who did they look to in terms of who?
They'd have a multitude of gods, and they would the monotheists. They would polytheists.
Yeah.
And Christianity was monotheist. So they were polytheists. They would have all kinds of gods, and the main thing was then that you had to appease the gods with offerings because they could strike you down. A thunderstorm to them would seem like the gods getting angry, and they could strike you with lightning.
But something you told me off air that really I found very interesting. They didn't believe in an afterlife.
Well, not in eternal life. Sometimes they would believe that the spirit of some of their leaders and that would continue on, and that's probably suggested why they considered them. But that's why Christianity maybe became so powerful and swept across Europe, because it has an afterlife for everybody. And the idea, a compelling idea, that we will all meet our loved ones again, like Maggie, who was in before us, if you know what I'm speaking about. She will meet Alex again. So that's compelling.
But
powerful, that wasn't there at that stage. So you had that was the Bronze Age, and it was, it's probably a neglected age then. And then what you had then was the coming of the Celts, and they changed things hugely.
Okay. Because where did they, just for clarity, where did they come from?
They came mostly from Central Europe.
Right.
Yeah, they were Central Europe. But it may have been that they were pushed out of Asia Minor because of other groups like the Vandals and the Huns coming in behind them and taking their land, that they were pushed west.
And what influence did they have on us then?
They had a huge influence. One I love myself is the one, because they brought us in the Irish language. And the Irish language then is about 2,500 years old in Ireland. Whereas you compare it with the English language, there's so much talk about it. Recognisable English language probably goes back to Chaucer about 1,000 years ago. So it's a much older, and of course I would say, much more mellifluous language as well, and something we should certainly treasure. But they brought in iron as well, and that's a much better metal than bronze. It makes much better weapons, so they were much better at chopping people's heads off, so they became
the Iron Age.
Yeah, they had the Iron Age. They became the top dogs in society. That was the thing. The Celts became dominant here in this country. Right. And the other, sorry, go ahead, you were saying.
No, I was just going to say, when they came, were they violent towards the settler, the people who had settled? But, I mean, did they come with a view to attack these people and take their land and stuff?
I said we were taught in school there was a Celtic invasion.
Yeah.
But it probably wasn't. They probably bled into the country. Now, I'm sure, like people who came later than the Normans and the Cromwellian settlers, they kicked people off their land at times. That's what people do. But there wasn't a whole, it wasn't like the Normans where a whole army ended up below in Wexford and started to conquer the country. We were trading. They would have found out about Ireland, been forced in here, and they would have brought in the Irish language, and that became the dominant language. There was some language here before, but nobody knows what it was. Because if we get back to it again, nothing could be written down. But they brought in this language. Now, probably picked up some of the old words. You know the way in English we still have pichogues,
so
they would have picked up, make a very, very rich language as well as that. But then in this period, the pre-Christian period, of course, what you have is the great myths of Ireland. That's it. So the great myths.
What, your Cuchullins and all?
Yeah, the Cuchullins. That's all from the Iron Age. Satanta, Cuchulainn, Fionn McCool, the Fianna, the Red Branch Knights, the children of Lear, Lowry, Lynchick, all of these people, the kings of Ireland, they're all written down in the great annals of Ireland. Now, they couldn't be written at the time. They were written later because, again, as you say, couldn't be written at the time because we had no way of writing. So that was it now. And a lot of people then, it's written in the Christian time. So you can see this thing is these people were pagan. But to kind of have a happy ending, then you'll find some of these stories, like Oisin as an old man comes back to Ireland, but he meets St. Patrick and he's baptised. So it's the happy ending. That, there will be an afterlife for these people. And then you have the children of Lear as well, and they meet some holy man and he baptizes them as well. So they're guaranteed eternal life. So we see the coming of
I would ask this, wouldn't I, with my other hat on me, was there music? Was there dance? Was there music?
Well, to be honest with you, was there... the human thing would be that there would be celebrations. There would have been, celebrations and that kind of thing. I'd say, generally speaking, what you're talking about is more formalised musical instruments.
Yeah.
So I'd say that would have come in mainly with the Celts and in the Iron Age, yes, that kind of thing. But, would people have had an impulse to sing, to come together and come... the main thing to remember about all these people is the circumstances are very different, but these people have exactly the same motivations, the same brain, the same fears, the same desires, the same want for social status and that we have in the modern world. Just their circumstances are different.
It might seem like a stupid question because I'm still finding it hard to place where we are just in terms of the years. Would there have been the beginnings of towns and cities? Nothing like that?
No, there would be nothing. In fact, what you're talking about are the only thing, what people had lived in the Iron Age is the ring forts. A whole family would have lived there, and then at times of war they were continually stealing each other's cattle. They would drive the cattle in there, and they would generally be on high ground. They would be defensive, and all those forts are still around. And of course, why? Because people still believe in that the fairies. And in fact, I'll tell you a very quick one. I was teaching heritage one time. I took a group out to show them a ring fort. I said, there's who lives in there now? They're all still around the ring forts, and they're mostly there because people are afraid to touch them because they're afraid of the fairies. And I said to one, this girl in their 20s, like, any of you believe in fairies? I said, well, fella's 6 inches high. Jeez, we always thought this fellow was losing his marbles, he was losing it. And then I said to one of the biggest, strong fellas who kind of, the hurling team and that, okay, you don't believe in fairies, you go in there and break off an old branch and bring it out to me. He looked at me, do you think I'm cracked or something? So it's still there. We still believe there is something out there, like the gods in the old days, that if we annoy the gods, they can destroy us.
So you say we're still influenced to some degree by our pre-Christian
I think we are, yeah.
heritage.
I think we are, yeah. I think the gene is still there, I was amazed, and I asked classes afterwards, and afterwards just we went out to the ring for it and said to them, and they all didn't believe in it. Then they said, no, I wouldn't go in. No, that'd be a very bad idea. And that's great because it preserves our heritage, of course, and that kind of thing. But these weren't, obviously fairy forts. This is where they live. So there were no towns and cities. The first things that you might recognise at a town were monastic sites. The first things. So Clonmacnoise and that, and they came in Christianity. But if you're talking towns, we'll be talking that later on in the series. Then you're talking about the Vikings, and the Vikings created Dublin, Waterford, Limerick, Cork, and most of they were nearly all coastal towns.
And before we leave this, I mean, we're still talking about a small population of people,
very small population, yeah.
And still forests.
They were beginning to disappear now, particularly towards the end of the Iron Age. There was an awful lot of deforestation in Ireland. Nobody ever knows. And of course, there was no census. But I'd say, coming up to the time of Christianity, you might have 100 to 200,000 people living in Ireland. You were very small, and they would have been widely dispersed from each other, population. So when Patrick came in, he'd have to walk from one place to another. So you can see then in Cashel, the Onacht were there in Cashel, but you can see a whole circuit of ring forts around them, going out to my own Boherlahan and that all, and that's probably where then the community of the Onacht.
Interesting. Were we seagoing? Were there vessels for trade going back and forth?
No doubt about it, because you can see stuff that was imported. Stuff has turned up in pre-Christian Ireland that came from as far away as Turkey. So there are more sophisticated people. It was very dangerous and that kind of thing. But boats would have traded with Britain, they would have traded with France. That's where we got the tin that produced the bronze as well as that. So, absolutely. But that's how and that eventually then is how Patrick came to Ireland as well as that, because not only were they going over to trade, they were going over to grab slaves as well, as the Roman Empire couldn't defend itself. It was falling apart, and that's how Patrick, in his own words anyway, ended up in Ireland as a slave.
Isn't it absolutely?
We'll be dealing with Patrick the next day.
All right, very good indeed. So that was our pre-Christian episode there, and as I say, we'll go from St. Patrick, which I'm really, really interested in that, because there's so much myth surrounding Patrick. You're going to sort out some of that. Right?
I'll try as best I can. The one thing is, we're certain he existed, and of course the one thing is, he's the first person to have written in Ireland, so we have his own words. But he's not a bit like the avuncular figure. He's like all the rest of us. He struggles with his own morality, and he struggles with where he wants to go, and is sad a lot of the time.
Very good indeed. All right, John, pleasure as always. Thank you very much indeed. That's it for me. Leanne produced, Ali looks after our content, and Stephen has the time tunnel on the lunchtime show. The finalist in our Pints in a Field competition with the two Johnnies is Owen Myers from Clogheen. Well done to you, Owen, and I'm sure you will we wish you the very best luck in the final on Friday. I'll talk to you tomorrow. Look after yourselves. Bye bye.
Tip FM's Tip Today
with Slattery's Garage, Puck On, main Peugeot dealers in the Premier County, and now stocking the full range of the luxury French car brand DS Automobiles. Book your test drive today with Slattery's Garage, Puck On. See slatterysgarage.ie.